Imagine putting on a museum audio headset and slowly realizing that the voice talking to you isn't part of the tour. So a few nights ago, I received a DM from a woman who visited the Titanic Museum back in 2011. And it has to do with these audio headphones that they used to offer back in the early 2000s. So back in the summer of 2011, my cousin and I visited the Titanic Museum attraction during a family trip. I was 19 at the time and absolutely obsessed with Titanic history. And what was extra cool was this was the 1-year anniversary of the museum being open. So they introduced something called an audio tour. I remember the museum giving everyone these black audio tour headsets with the little number keypad you use to enter the exhibit numbers. I did a little bit more research myself, and I guess at the time they had introduced these headsets. They had either a youth tour or an adult tour, and the museum had several plaques with different numbers on them. You would simply just enter the number and then press like a little green button, and then it would tell you all about that section of the museum. And she remembers the narration being voiced by like a maid or someone on the ship. They handed us boarding passes with the actual names of real passengers who were on the ship, and everyone's assigned to someone. And I thought it was so bizarre that I ended up with a woman with the same name as me. My cousin then pointed out how weird it was that we had the same name and that our birthday was in the same month, which I'm not going to repeat the name because she wants to keep herself anonymous. But going on to Google, this was one of the third-class passengers. In the very last section of the tour, you find out if the passenger that you were assigned was a survivor or not. I stopped at literally every single exhibit, would press the button, and let it share with me the most beautiful, tragic stories about every single item. The whole experience felt strangely emotional from the beginning. The lighting was dim, everything echoed, and the audio narration was done in a calm, almost too personal voice. It made it feel less like a museum and more like someone quietly telling you what happened to them. It took me through an entire recreation of where the third-class passengers would stay, and it made the passenger that I was assigned so real. I just kept imagining her running down these hallways, sleeping in these quarters. Everything on the audio tour just added to this experience. But then something started to go a little bit wonky whenever I got to the staircase exhibit. For those of you who have seen this part of the exhibit, it is stunning. It looks exactly like the Titanic. And the moment that I walked in there, the audio suddenly cracked like I had bad reception, even though it wasn't wireless. Again, wired old headphones. Then instead of the narrator talking about the exhibit that I was standing at, I heard what sounded like muffled voices underneath the static. Nothing was clear enough for me to even make out. It was just layered voices. And at first I thought maybe there was another nearby device that was interfering somehow, until I heard a woman very clearly say, "Please come back." I remember freezing because it sounded nothing like the museum narration. It sounded emotional and panicked. And then the regular tour audio came back on like nothing happened. I actually pulled one of the headsets off to make sure the sound wasn't coming from somewhere else in the room. My cousin asked me what I was doing, so I told her that my headset was glitching, and she just rolled her eyes and joked that the Titanic ghosts were trying to contact me. But what really bothered me happened a few rooms later. The headset actually started to play narration for an exhibit that we hadn't even reached yet. It described a woman who was waiting for her husband over where the first-class passengers would stay. The narrator specifically talked about her outfit: gloves, a black dress, pearls. And at the time I thought that I had maybe accidentally typed in the wrong exhibit number, until eventually we reached the room that the narration had been describing. Because standing near the fireplace, exactly how it was described in my audio, was a woman dressed in black. She was standing there quietly with her hands folded, and I remember thinking how cool it was that one of the employees was dressed like this. I remember wondering if this was like a position that was rotated between the employees, or if they just had someone out there that week since they were just introducing the audio tour. Either way, I thought it was cool that she was adding to the whole experience of it all, just standing there quietly with her hands folded. I do remember noticing how strange it was that no one else seemed to really pay attention to her, because she looked completely out of place compared to everyone else around her. The rest of the staff was like in these maid uniforms almost, and the men's outfits kind of looked like bellboys. My cousin walked ahead while I stayed behind reading one of the other plaques, and when I looked back up, the woman was gone. I thought maybe I just lost some time looking at this plaque for too long, or maybe I was just seeing things. A few minutes later, as I got closer to the part of the exhibit that was supposed to be the front of the boat, the audio in my headset crackled again. This time there was no narration at all, but what sounded like distant rushing water and people talking over each other. Then I heard a little girl laugh. This wasn't screaming or terror or anything. There was just a girl laughing. I ripped my headset off immediately because it scared me so badly. My cousin walked back. It's so weird. I just felt like something touched me. Okay, I hate, what the fuck? My cousin walked back over to me and was like, "Dude, why are you acting so weird?" So I handed her the headset and I asked if she heard that too. She looked at me strange and was just like, "This audio sounds normal. What do you mean?" At the very end of the tour, whenever we went to go return the devices, I just casually told an employee that mine kept glitching. So I expected her to apologize or maybe even offer to like swap it out and go back through again or something. I don't know. But instead she got really quiet and asked, "Did it happen near the staircase?" I genuinely thought that she was joking at first, but she looked completely serious. And she just said some people haven't liked the audio tour. And that was it. No explanation, no refund, nothing. Even though they had just introduced this audio tour, it almost sounded like she had to say it a few times before, or that she was instructed to say that. I know that logically there's probably an explanation for all of this: old equipment, bad audio files, imagination getting carried away in a very emotional environment. But I swear to God, when I heard that woman's voice in the headset, it sounded real. And for some reason, it still bothers me me all these years later. I definitely feel like I believe this, because how can a museum that carries artifacts from one of the most devastating shipwrecks in history just not have some sort of residual energy there? You know what I mean? Weirdly enough, just this last month, a Titanic exhibit in Illinois flooded on the exact anniversary of the ship sinking. Staff literally called it almost paranormal. On the exact day of the 114th anniversary of the Titanic sinking, at the Volta Museum, the Titanic exhibit was the only exhibit that flooded. Only one. Staff had said that that building had never flooded before. It happened on April 14th to 15th, the exact anniversary, but they couldn't immediately find a clear source for the water. And that just feels like something that is too strange to ignore. At the Titanic Museum in Branson, people have heard children near the staircase exhibits, unexplained cold spots, guests crying unexpectedly during certain rooms, reports of seeing a woman dressed in black near the staircase, shadow figure claims that have actually been caught during paranormal TV investigations, and employees refusing to work certain sections alone. At another location in Pigeon Forge, some people will actually report that it feels like the boat is moving, sounds of people running, and also report sightings of a woman dressed in black near the staircase. What? As well as technology glitches on phones. So I genuinely feel like the creepiest part of the story that was submitted to me is that she is clearly not the only person experiencing things at this museum. So naturally, I booked a ticket and I'm going to be going to the Titanic Museum myself, so let's get on a flight to Tennessee. So I just got to the Titanic Museum and it's crazy how much it looks like it in real life. Like, it's wild to see. Let's go inside and explore the Titanic Museum.
My boyfriend has been acting terrified of me since we got back from the Appalachian Trail. I don't know what I did wrong. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. I need to write this down because I feel like I'm losing my mind, and putting it somewhere outside of my head might help. Dane and I have been together for 4 years. We're the kind of couple that finishes each other's sentences, that has a whole private language of inside jokes and shorthand. I know him better than I know anyone. I say that because I need you to understand that when I tell you something is wrong with him, I'm not being paranoid. I know this man. We got back from a section hike on the Appalachian Trail 11 days ago. We did about 200 miles over 3 weeks, starting in Virginia. It was Dane's idea. He'd always wanted to do a long stretch, and I had never done anything longer than a weekend trip. I was nervous. He was so excited he could barely sleep the week before we left. The first 2 weeks were incredible. Hard, but incredible. We fell into a rhythm. We'd hike until late afternoon, set up camp, cook whatever dehydrated thing we'd packed, and lay on top of our sleeping bags talking until one of us fell asleep mid-sentence. I felt closer to him out there than I ever had. No phones, no obligations, just the two of us and the mountain. It was the third week when things started to feel off. I don't know how to explain it except to say that the woods changed. Not visibly. Everything looked the same trail, the same trees, but the quality of the air felt different. Thicker somehow, like the atmosphere had shifted by a degree you couldn't measure but could feel in your chest. Dane felt it too. He got quieter. He'd always been the one pointing things out to look at the ridge, look at that bird, but he stopped. He just hiked. Eyes forward, jaw set. On the fourth night of that week, I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in the tent. I found him standing about 20 feet away at the tree line, just standing there looking into the dark. I called his name and he turned around so fast it startled me. He looked, I don't know, not scared exactly, more like he'd been caught doing something. He said he needed to use the bathroom. We went back to the tent. He didn't sleep after that. I could feel him lying awake next to me all night. We finished the hike 2 days later and drove home. I thought once we were back in our apartment with our things and our routines, he'd return to himself. He hasn't. He flinches when I touch him. Not every time, but enough that I've started hesitating before I reach for him. Last week I came up behind him while he was doing dishes and put my hand on his shoulder, and he made a sound. Not a word, just a sound, and stepped away from me. He apologized immediately. Said he was jumpy lately. Blamed it on bad sleep. He's not sleeping. I hear him up at all hours, but when I get up to check on him, he always comes back to bed right away. Says he's fine, and lies there stiff as a board until I fall asleep. He started locking the bedroom door at night. We share a bedroom, we share a bed. For the past 6 days, I've been waking up on the couch with no memory of getting there, and the bedroom door locked from the inside, and Dane on the other side of it claiming he has no idea how I ended up in the living room. He says I must be sleepwalking. He says it gently, the way you say things to someone you're frightened of. I asked him last night to please just tell me what was wrong. I sat across from him at the kitchen table and asked him to look me in the eye and tell me what I had done. He looked at me for a long time. His jaw worked. I watched him decide something. He said, "You haven't done anything. I've just been in my head since the trail. I'm sorry." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He let go after less than a second. I went to the bathroom after dinner and stood at the sink for a long time. I looked at myself in the mirror. Normal. Tired. A little thinner than before the hike, but normal. I turned the faucet on and splashed water on my face. When I looked up, I was smiling. I hadn't smiled, I wasn't smiling, but my reflection was, for just a second, just long enough for me to see it wearing an expression I hadn't put there. Wide and still and patient. Then it was just my face again. I told myself it was the lighting, the water in my eyes, but I've been thinking about the third week on the trail, how the air changed, how I have no clear memories from those last 2 days of hiking, just flashes, a strange taste in my mouth, a sound like something large moving parallel to the trail just past where the trees got thick, waking up outside the tent once with dirt under my fingernails and no explanation. I've been thinking about how Dane stood at the tree line that night, how he looked when he turned around, the sound he made when I touched his shoulder. I've been thinking about the mirror. I've been telling myself I need to ask him what he saw on that trail, what he's been seeing since we got back. But there's another part of me, quiet, patient, underneath, that doesn't want him to answer. That part doesn't want him to say it out loud. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I should be scared of what's happening to Dane or scared of something else entirely. I just know that last night I dreamt about the woods, the smell of them, the dark. And when I woke up, I was hungry in a way I've never been before, a way I don't have words for. I don't know how to end this post because I don't know what I'm even asking. I guess I just needed someone else to know. I'll update when I can.
Hey y'all, ghost story time. And this one comes to us from my sister. Now, this is a story from her old house. And this is a house that was in the middle of the woods. It wasn't haunted per se, like nothing consistently happened on a regular basis, nothing daily, weekly, monthly, nothing, anything like that. But this one particular night, something happened. Now, this was in the middle of the week. Nothing significant was going on in her life at this time. She had work the next day. Now, they had this dog. They'd had this dog for, I don't know, a couple years. He was a black Russian terrier, big, huge thing. Like, if you walked in this house, you'd be scared of this thing, right? But he stayed in a kennel in their room at night, right? Like, he didn't sleep in the bed with them, like nothing like that. But they're protective dogs, right? So this particular night, she goes to bed just like normal. Jack is his name, was in the cage, and randomly middle of the night, probably like 2 a.m., she wakes up to him like low growling, not a full-on bark, like he's losing his mind in his cage, nothing like that, but a low growl, like he was agitated. He thought he sensed something, and she's like, I don't know, could it be something outside? Who knows? So she goes back to bed, right? Doesn't think anything of it. It's pitch black in the room. All the lights are out. Nothing's outside. She doesn't hear anything. No door slam. Nothing, right? She goes to bed. And the next morning, she wakes up to go to work, brushes her teeth, is getting dressed. She reaches for her bra, and the strap that goes over her shoulder is burnt. And I don't mean like, oh, there's a little burn mark. It was burnt all the way through. Her favorite bra. Like, she could not wear this thing unless she sewed it back up, and who has time for that when you're getting ready for work, right? So how crazy. Like, she did not, this was on her nightstand, right? She was a smoker at the time. She didn't have a lighter in the room. She didn't have candles on her dresser or her nightstand, like nothing like that. So nothing technically could have, lit there, nothing that could have ignited in flame and singed this thing. She took it off. She put it on, in this particular spot in her room. She came up the next day, got it in the same spot. Like, it wasn't moved. She asked her husband, like, hey, did you light a candle in here last night? Like, even though there's not one in here today, did you smell smoke, anything? And he's like, no, like, this is so weird. But then she remembered the dog growling in the middle of the night. And she's like, what was in here? I don't know. This was before I tapped in and, took my abilities seriously. But that was weird. It was also weird that it was her favorite bra. She had to go out and buy a new one. Y'all, what was this? What do you think it was? I don't know. They could be flesh pedestrians, if you catch my drift. Things of the woods, you know. She does live in Georgia, in the woods, in the middle of nowhere. So, I mean, we can use our imaginations on that. Or was it something else? I don't know. Give me your thoughts. This one racked my brain. This was really interesting. So, anyways, hope this starts your day out right. Y'all go have a fun, what is it, Wednesday? Okay. Love you. Bye.
Let's read a scary story about an unknown entity. Hi, my name is Ari, and I want to tell you about a creepy figure that seemed to haunt my house. This experience happened shortly after my mom got married and we moved into a new house. At the time, I was still pretty young and didn't have my own room, so I shared a room with my brother, my mom, and my stepdad. My brother and I slept on a mattress on the floor. The first night in the house seemed completely normal. Before falling asleep, my brother and I stayed up talking about our plans for the week, and eventually, we drifted off to sleep. At some point during the night, I suddenly woke up. I had no idea what time it was. I was about to close my eyes and go back to sleep when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Next to my mom's bed was a mirror, and reflected in it was what looked like a shadowy figure of a man. It was just standing there, silently watching my mom sleep. For some reason, instead of waking anyone up, I rolled over and went back to sleep. Looking back, I think I was simply too scared to react. The next morning, I told my mom what I had seen. Like most parents would, she brushed it off and didn't believe me. A few days later, I told my stepsister, who had already been living in the house before we moved in. To my surprise, she immediately believed me. She told me that around the same time, she had secretly invited her boyfriend over one night. Everything had seemed normal until she briefly left her room. When she came back, her boyfriend looked terrified. He told her that while she was gone, he had seen a shadowy figure standing in the hallway that led toward my mom's room. He was so frightened that he couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. At first, my stepsister wasn't sure whether to believe him or not, but after hearing my story, she became convinced that he had been telling the truth. At that time, my stepdad was renting one of the rooms to a family friend, and my grandma was also in the process of moving into the house. One day, I went to work with the family friend to help him out. During the drive, I casually told him about the figure that I had seen. Without hesitation, he told me that before I had moved in, he had also seen a shadowy figure walking through the house, specifically down the hallway toward my mom's room. After hearing that, I told my grandma everything. She felt that too many people had witnessed the same thing for it to be ignored, so she suggested having the house blessed. Not long afterward, the house was blessed, and after that, nobody reported seeing the shadow figure again, at least not for a while. Several months later, my grandma woke up early one morning to use the restroom. As she was walking back toward her room, she noticed a dark figure standing in the kitchen. Because of the distance and the darkness, she assumed it was either me or my brother. She called out, "Who are you? I can't see your face." The moment she said that, the figure took a single step to the left and vanished. My grandma immediately walked into the kitchen to see where it had gone, but nobody was there. The room was completely empty. To this day, I can't explain what I saw that first night. What's even harder to explain is why several other people in the house described seeing the exact same shadowy figure in the same area of the house. Whether it was something paranormal or just a strange coincidence, it's an experience none of us have ever forgotten.
Working overnights in a hospital can be quite interesting. Especially, hospitals have a lot of trauma, a lot of people passing away, a lot of spiritual activity, especially if the hospital is really old, and the one I work at is very old. So I know there are times where even the people that aren't very sensitive will see spirits. They'll think that, like, for instance, my coworker saw me walk across the room to the back of the room. He thought I was going to get supplies. And when he went to say something to me, I came walking from the other side of the room. So he realized it wasn't me. And I see stuff like that all the time. But one night I was in the locker room and I was using the bathroom. And there's two stalls in there. One's a bigger one, one's a smaller one. And I was getting ready to leave the stall after I was done. And I turned for a second to look at the stall next to me, and I could see the bottom part of legs and feet sticking out from underneath. It's like they were standing with their face and their body against the stall, facing me. It was creepy. It took me a minute to register that I was seeing somebody's legs and feet standing there. I was like, wait a minute. There's nobody in here with me. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I would have heard them, seen them and heard them walk away, because when I looked back after the second, there was nobody there. And they weren't even wearing the color scrubs that we wear. We wear kind of a teal color, green teal color. And this was a dark navy blue with white shoes. So I have no idea. Maybe at one point in time they did. I've seen so many creepy things in that locker room, and especially in our area there, the things happening physically, having things fly off the wall and hit me and fall off the ceiling and hit me. Things crawling on the floor. I went to wash my hands one time and I could see humanoid little creature type things sitting up on top of the stall watching me wash my hands. And these are all just for a few seconds at a time. You see it and then it's gone. But you saw something enough that you can recreate it in your mind of what you just saw. Most of the time it's pretty creepy. It'll make my hair stand on end. Other times I just don't think much about it, and I'll go share with coworkers what I just saw. But they'll see things, even if they're not sensitive to it. So there's a lot of activity going on there. It's not all the time, but most of the time. It's quite interesting.
Get ready with me while we talk about Appalachian Granny Witches, my spiritual experiences as a child, and the ghost stories I was told growing up. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. Let's go. I wanted to get on here and tell y'all about my personal family lore about Appalachian Granny Witches. So buckle in. My great-grandma, I did not get to meet her, but she was an interesting woman, and there's been a lot of stories told about her over the years. Apparently she was meaner than a striped snake, but she was very religious, and she kept all of her deepest, darkest secrets, all of the family gossip in her family Bible, which we have no idea where that went, or at least I don't know where that went. Now, if you don't know anything about Appalachian Granny Witches, you might not know that a lot of them were deeply Christian. And all the time growing up, I'd get told stories about these Christian witches. We didn't call them Granny Witches. Now, my great-grandma, she lived on a road that was notorious in my town. Everyone always rumored that there was a lot of witchcraft that happened on that road. I remember one time my mom took us down that road and we went wandering around because there's little hiking trails and stuff that you can go down. We found what looked to be an altar of some kind. It was very strange, and I was a kid, so I didn't really fully comprehend it at the time. But my mom was like, here, you see, I told you, a lot of witchcraft happens down here. And my mom would tell me that there were a lot of those granny witches, we called them Christian witches, that would just live in shacks out here on this road, and everyone would just leave them alone. Well, apparently, there was one of those that lived next door to my great-grandma, and she had befriended her. They had become great friends over the years. It was a really, really bad winter, and my great-grandma asked one of her sons to take over a stack of firewood to the lady next door that she was friends with. This son was a headache and a half, okay? He was kind of an outlaw, had a lot of issues. Anyway, side note. But apparently he took over the firewood, and when he walked into her living room, there were regular playing cards laid out on the table. Now, this is his account of the whole situation, passed down through years and years. Apparently, she put her hands over the playing cards on the table, and she went like that, and they all flew to the ceiling and stuck to it. And of course, he refused to ever go back, and he told his mom that he refused to go over to that mean old witch's house, and he had always said that, and that's probably why they didn't like each other, because he was always saying that he didn't want to see her. She creeped him out, but that scared him straight. Alright, well, he still committed a life of crime, but it scared him straight from going over to her house, I guess. And of course, these are just stories that are passed down through the years, and I might not have all my details right, but that road has a lot of stories attached to it. But my great-grandma was a very mysterious woman, and we always kind of speculated that either she was a granny witch herself, or she just had an appreciation for what they did. Now back to this road that we're talking about. So my mother obviously spent a lot of her childhood living on that road, and as she got older and she became my mother, she got really into the paranormal. She was really into ghost hunting and all that kind of stuff. So I guess one time, her and her friends had went down this road to do some ghost hunting. Keep in mind, you don't get any cell phone service on this road. There were cell phones then. I'm not that old. She had her little flip phone in her pocket or whatever, She went down that road and did what she needed to do. She came back out, and she had one missed call and one voicemail. So she listens to the voicemail, and it is the most disturbing noise you've ever heard. It is this like grunting, moaning. I have no other way to describe it other than like demonic sounding. And then obviously I was a kid, so I don't remember exactly what it sounded like. But she kept that voicemail on that phone for a very, very long time. Pretty spooky if you ask me. Now, as for me, I never experienced much in the ways of ghosts and spirits. However, I told y'all a little bit about growing up in the house that I grew up in. You know, we built a new build house. I remember I would see shadows out of the corner of my eyes when I lived in that house a lot. Now, this is a story I still believe to this day was exactly what it seemed to be. So, one of my mammals passed away when I was really, really young. I think I was about 6 or 7. She came to visit me in a dream. I remember the dream still so vividly to this day. It's insane. So obviously my mama, up until she passed, she was very sick. But in this dream, she looked exactly like herself. And there was this golden glow behind her, unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And she looked at me, and she told me something that I needed to hear. It wasn't for me. It was for somebody else in the family. At the time, I was a kid, so I had no way of knowing how other people in the family were taking it, because I didn't even fully grasp the concept of unaliving yet, right? Which I found out later in life, obviously, that that person needed to actually hear that thing. They had been having a really hard time with her passing. So I really think that for whatever reason, my mama chose me as a messenger for that message. And sometimes when I think about it, I wonder if it's because kids have a thinner veil with the spirit world than us adults do. When we get older, we put up all these walls without realizing it. That has been my only true, like, spiritual experience, and it's always stuck with me to this day.
As you guys know, I've been staying at like rented places across the United States while I try to finish my van. And normally that is fine. That's fine. But last night was not okay, and I literally felt like I was in a real horror movie. Let me just tell you about it. So I'm traveling through this small town in West Virginia. If you guys travel a lot, you know the later it gets, the less hotels, Airbnbs, etc. are available. I book the first cheapest place that I can find. It's whatever. I show up and it starts getting weird almost immediately because I did self-check-in and the guy is there. The guy is standing outside and he starts asking me these weird questions while he's showing me around the house. And he's asking me questions like, oh, like how long are you staying? Like questions that he should know the answer to because he's literally who I booked with. You should know all of these things. The house is shaped weird. Outside, the house looks like a normal like 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house. But inside it's like a circle, and I've never seen a house like this. It literally, like, you go from one room to the next room. Each room has a door to the next room. Like, the house literally moves you in a circle as he's giving me this tour. There's only one adult bedroom. Like, there's a children's like bed that's like a bunk bed, and then there's like an adult room. So obviously I choose the adult room to sleep in. Well, here's the weird thing. He didn't show me this. He had already left. There's a closet. The closet in the adult room faces the bed, and that wall has, you know, like that weird design that like people use the paintbrush and they like make a bunch of little black marks. So that's the design on the wall. And then there's a door, and that door, you open it, it's the only door in the house without a lock, by the way. You open it and it's not just a closet, it's a hall that leads to the front of the house, and it's the only one without a lock. I'm like, great, like this is like already spooky. I've already been hearing things, but I'm just telling myself, like, you know, it's an old house, we're in West Virginia, like it's whatever. I was literally gonna take my rollers out while I told you this story, but I've just gotten so distracted. I'm laying in the bed, and then I am about to fall asleep, and I hear footsteps, and I'm like, that sounds like it's coming from inside the house. And then I'm like, wait, that sounds like it's coming from inside the closet. And so I'm like, it's probably nothing, but I sit up anyways to like look at the closet, because when I'm laying down I can only see the top of the closet. I sit up, there's a shadow like where human feet would be behind the door, and so I get up as quietly as I possibly can, and there's a desk with a chair in the room, and I grab the chair as quietly as I can, and I shove it under the doorknob on that door so the door can't open. And when I do that, I hear shuffling behind the door. So I'm already convinced. I'm like, this is the scariest place I've ever stayed in my life. And I've stayed some pretty crazy places because I'm a ghost hunter. So then it gets worse. Of course it does. It gets worse. I lay back down, and at this point I already know I'm not sleeping. Like, it's very unlikely I'm falling asleep tonight. So I pull out a book and I leave the lamp on and I'm reading my book. I notice some like movement on the wall. Like, I see it in my peripheral, and I'm like, that's weird. And I move in to like be close to the wall, but I'm still in the bed, and I realize that not all of the streaks from the paint, the black streaks, some of them are holes in the wall, like a hole in the wall. And so I get up and I walk over to the wall, and I see an eye staring back at me. And it's safe to say I left. I literally grabbed my bag. I hadn't unpacked this whole time because the guy creeped me out to begin with. I grabbed my bag and I left, and that's probably the worst review I have ever given a rental.
We got another true viewer story tonight, and this one took place at the Devil's Tramping Grounds. Now, this was submitted by Little Ducklings 23, and for those of you who are not familiar with the Devil's Tramping Grounds, it's like this perfect circle, roughly 40 foot in diameter, just out in the middle of the woods, and nothing will grow there in this perfect symmetrical circle. Even though there's lush vegetation all the way around it, nothing will grow in this circle. And it's been like that literally for centuries. There has been lore associated with the Devil's Tramping Grounds since before the Revolutionary War. And there are a lot of different origin theories or origin stories, but the most popular is that the devil stomps that ground at night, pacing, thinking of all the evil he's going to unleash to the world. And it's a perfect circle and nothing will grow there. Now, that's the most popular narrative, but this story took place there. It started off like a normal night, and my husband was in Greensboro, North Carolina for work. So we got bored at the hotel and nothing was open, so we decided to go somewhere exciting and awning. Well, we went, and I didn't know much about this place, so my husband told me, don't worry, it isn't that bad. But that night, I didn't know where I was headed. There's no turnaround spots that we could see at night, so we had to back out. All the directions had the same roads. We went into a loop for it seemed like an hour. So I looked at my husband and asked, are we lost? He said, no, just another drive, right? I said, okay, as long as we can find our way back. Well, we pull in and we see red lights, brighter than the stars itself, and nothing is around. So I asked my husband, do you think there's a barn or somewhere there? And he said he didn't think so. So we pull up a little closer to the light, and that's when we seen the horns. We tried backing out, but the battery went straight dead. The car wasn't idling, and it had a half tank, so it just went completely dead. We both got scared and we went in the back, and thank God we carry battery chargers, tire pumps, and all that because of car issues from the past. We had to run to the battery and run back in the car. We were so scared, and that night we got the car started, and the second time I got out and quickly grabbed the battery and we backed out, the devil or whoever was wearing a costume in the middle of nowhere heard us and walked and growled heavily towards us. We backed out and got lost for real, but it didn't follow, needless to say. We never thought that would happen, and we are never going back, because even though it didn't follow, we could see ghost cars, no face, no body in them. Finally, waited at the hotel and went straight home. Thank you, Little Ducklings, for that story. That's terrifying. I'm glad that you guys got out of there okay. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions, y'all. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. And keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
Okay, let's talk about the back rooms. This concept disturbs me to my absolute core. I mean, if my reality is in question, I'm done so. Like forever, brain fried. And the back room is like the goat of creepypastas, okay? And I'm going to read this to you, and it is so like brain warpingly disturbing. Okay. So here's the story of the back rooms. If you're not careful and you clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms where it's nothing but the stink of old, moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. It was approximately 12:15 when I entered the Johnson County Community Health Clinic. I was there for an appointment I had set up weeks ago, just a routine checkup. It wasn't a new place for me. I had been there a couple of times before. However, the place had an odd nostalgic feel to it, as if it were a location from my childhood or something. I could never quite pinpoint exactly what this feeling was or where it came from. As I walked in, an overwhelming feeling of deja vu swept over me. The hum of the flickering fluorescent lights, the white tile flooring, the muted beige paint that colored the walls. I noticed that there was a TV mounted in the corner, a smaller flat screen that was playing a short PowerPoint slideshow on a loop of ads and events that were being held by the clinic. I passed the empty waiting area, a small section of the main room with magazines, children's playthings, and blue cushioned chairs, and approached the woman at the front desk. She was sitting in a bluish gray office chair, looking at a spreadsheet on the same Windows XP desktop they've had since 2008. There was a sign in sheet on the counter in front of me. I have an appointment with Dr. Pebbins, I asked. What time? 12:30, I replied. She began typing something on her keyboard. Ah, yes, she responded. Gary Johnston? Mm-hmm. Yes, I'll tell the doctor. Please fill this out. She handed me a clipboard, which held a simple fill out form. I walked back to the waiting area, took a seat, and began to complete it. I was about halfway done with writing down my information when I slumped back in my chair. I hadn't gotten much sleep the night prior, and I was exhausted. As I slumped back, I noticed something very peculiar. My head never hit the wall. In fact, it felt like it went in. I got up, quite frightened, and looked at the wall. Nothing. Not a single hole or dent had been made in the wall by my head. So I reached to touch the wall, and my fingers went through it. I recoiled in shock. What the hell was that? I thought, as I reached to touch the wall again, only to find that my fingers clipped through once more. Then suddenly I lost my balance, tripped, and fell directly through it. I landed face first on some dirty tan carpeting. Upon getting back up, I realized that I was in a completely different room. Well, not really a room per se, more so a set of rooms, all of which are connected by openings. The walls were covered in gross tan patterned wallpaper. There was also an overwhelming stench of a moist carpet. I turned back around and tried to put my hand back through the wall, and it wouldn't go through. Okay, what the fuck? I muttered. I looked back into the room. No doors and nothing on the walls other than that disgusting wallpaper, of course. It was completely empty aside from a singular plastic blue school chair. At this point, the only thing going through my mind was fear and the repeating thought of, I need to leave, on loop in my head. I started running through the rooms, desperately trying to find an exit, but to no avail. There was no exit. Was this my permanent location until I died? No, there had to be a way out. I wasn't just going to be left here, right? Eventually, someone would notice that I was gone, but nobody did. Then, in the distance, I heard footsteps, but not those of a human, at least, not a normal human. Alongside the footsteps was a gurgling snarl, like that of an angry animal. I began to run. I ran as fast as I could from whatever the hell was approaching me. I didn't want anything to do with it. I ran for what seemed like forever, but I was always back in the same room I started in. At least it looked like the same room, not that I could tell them apart. So I sat down, defeated. The feeling of dread filled my body as I started to cry. I was going to die here. I'm still there. I haven't left. I've accepted my fate. In fact, I can actually hear footsteps. I wonder who that is. Okay. The thought of being lost in an infinite building or maze makes me nauseous. I don't know if it's my claustrophobia, something about the fifth dimension or true alternate realities is so disturbing to me. Like, I cannot handle it. I literally have chills. So, what do you think about the backrooms? Is it just a creepy pasta or is it rooted in some truth?
I buy dead people's history and I wish I'd never bought that 1994 tape. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. Grab a blanket and get cozy because I'm about to read a creepy story. My name is Liam. I buy dead people's history. I run a small antique shop in an isolated, foggy town in Oregon. Last month, I went to an estate sale at an old abandoned farmhouse. The family had vanished back in '94. In the basement, buried under the layers of dust, I found a heavy, vintage, reel-to-reel tape recorder, a beautiful wooden Panasonic one. Inside it was a single, unlabeled magnetic tape. The auctioneer sold it to me for $20. He just wanted it out of his sight. That night, inside of my empty shop, the rain was pouring against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. I cleaned the machine, plugged it in, and pressed the heavy mechanical play button. Clunk. The plastic reels began to spin slowly. For the first 30 seconds, there was nothing but the low, warm hiss of empty tape. Hiss, then a sound emerged. It was a child's voice, a little girl giggling. But the laughter was strangely slowed down, distorted. "Daddy," she whispered, "the man in the wall is playing the skin game again." My skin crawled. I reached out to stop the tape, but then a second voice broke through. It was a man, sobbing, breathing heavily. I locked the basement. The man wept into the microphone, but he didn't come through the door. He grew out of the shadows, under the floorboards. Suddenly, a violent, wet, tearing sound echoed from the speakers, like wet cloth being ripped apart. The man let out a blood-curdling shriek and was cut off instantly by a loud, mechanical click. The tape went silent, just as the static remained hissing. I sat there frozen, staring at the spinning reels. That's when I noticed the smell of old, stagnant blood and wet hair filling my entire shop. I couldn't sleep that night. The sound of that tearing flesh kept echoing in my skull. The next day, I decided to do something stupid. I wanted to see if anyone on the internet knew about the 1994 farmhouse incident. I set up my phone on a tripod and started a live broadcast on Reddit for my followers. I wanted to play the tape live to see if anyone recognized the voices. "Hey guys," I said to the camera, "listen to this tape I found." I pressed play. The audio began. The little girl's whisper, the man sobbing, the wet tearing sound. The comment section on my live stream went absolutely insane. Fake, creepy, turn it off. But then one user, named Shadow94, commented something that made my heart stop. "Look behind you, on the monitor." Behind my desk, I had a large black security monitor displaying live feed of my shop's showroom. I slowly turned my head to look at it. The showroom was dark. It was only lit by the street lamps outside. On the screen, I saw myself sitting at the desk broadcasting, but then the tape on the reel-to-reel recorder hit that violent click sound. On the security monitor, the reflection of my shop window changed. The glass didn't show the rainy street anymore. It showed a massive, impossibly tall creature pressed flat against the glass from the outside. It had no face, just a giant, wet, vertical slit down the middle of its head. I whipped my head around to look at the real window. It was empty, just rain. I looked back at the monitor. The creature on the screen was now inside the room. It was standing directly behind my chair. It raised a long skeletal arm and placed a single pale finger onto my shoulder. In real life, in that exact moment, I felt a bone-chilling, freezing pressure drop onto my left shoulder. I screamed, throwing myself forward off the chair. My phone fell, breaking the live stream. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the shop into the freezing rain, leaving the door wide open. I drove to a hotel 3 towns away, shaking, crying, locking myself in the bathroom. I stayed there for 3 days until the police finally agreed to check the shop. When they went in, they found the shop completely untouched. No monster, no sign of a break-in, except for one thing. The vintage tape recorder was gone. They thought I had a psychological breakdown. I never went back to that shop. I closed the business, sold the inventory online, and moved to a small, modern apartment in Seattle. No antiques, no old things, everything new. But yesterday was my birthday. A heavy cardboard box arrived at my door with no return address. I thought it was a gift from my sister, and I opened it. Inside, resting on a bed of old newspaper, was a single black modern cassette tape. Written on it in permanent marker was my name, Liam. My hands shook badly. I could barely breathe. I didn't want to play it. I threw it in the trash chute of my building. I went to bed, praying, trying to forget. But exactly at 3:14 a.m., I woke up. The apartment was dead silent, except for a faint rhythmic sound coming from inside my bedroom closet. It was the sound of a magnetic tape spinning. I froze in my bed, paralyzed with absolute terror. The closet door slowly clicked open an inch. And from the darkness inside, a voice drifted out. It wasn't the little girl. It wasn't the man. It was my own voice. It was a recording of me from 3 days ago screaming in my hotel bathroom. But the recording was slowed down, distorted, wet. And beneath my screaming voice, I could hear the wet, rhythmic clicking of fingers, tapping against the inside of the closet door, moving closer to my bed. Unfortunately, that is where it ends. Let me know what you thought of that story and what you would do in his position, because I don't know. If you have any scary stories of your own that you'd like me to read, just send me a message.
Okay, story time about the time that I saw a ghost at Sentosa, and yes, I'm using a filter today because I don't have time for makeup. Now, I was very sick at the time, so it could have been my fever. It could have been literally a fever dream, but I don't know. I doubt it. So we were staying in like these huts in Sentosa, and they were like in a circle. This was, I don't know, like this trip should have never happened. Anyway, it was a school trip. I was coughing like mad, and I had to stay in one of the little hut things with 2 of my female friends. So I'm sleeping on the bottom bunk, and in the middle of the night, I wake up because I'm having a coughing fit. Like, I had a bad cough and like phlegm and everything. So for some reason, while I'm half awake, I turn my torchlight on and I aim it towards the door. And there is my friend standing at the door in the dark, and she's very, very pale. Like, she's standing there like this. And I'm like, Manila, what are you doing? Her name was Manila. And then I knocked out in the morning. I asked her, like, hey, I saw you get up last night. And she was like, no, I didn't. And then we all realized that that was not her. Like, at no point did she get up and stand at the door and stare at me. But nobody else seemed freaked out by this. And to be honest, I wasn't that freaked out either until, like, I thought about it later on. I also woke up with dried vomit in my hair, so that was really, yeah, disgusting. Anyway, after like that experience and hearing about Pulau Ubin and all that, like, just think before sending your kids to these areas for like trips or whatever. I have a lot more supernatural experiences, but they are all not mine. So let me know if you want to hear.
There were 3 of the same exact person. So I used to go to church with this girl when I was younger, and she was really sweet, outgoing, fun, super nice. And then all of a sudden, she had like a night and day change in her, and she got involved in some rugs, and she got involved with the wrong crowd. She started getting into dark stuff like occult stuff, and really obsessed with Ouija boards. So I remember there was like 2 or 3 weeks that we hadn't seen her. We saw her mom, but we never saw her. And I remember towards the end of it, her mom started confiding into my grandparents, and she was telling them how she came home from work one day and she goes to walk in the house and she sees her daughter on the couch watching TV, and she says hey to her, and the girl just kind of nods. She goes to go upstairs to, like, I guess change into her house clothes, and she sees her daughter coming down the stairs, and she's like, what? And she turns back around, and y'all know why. She can see her daughter on the couch and this other daughter at the same exact time. So she's getting freaked out. She's coming back down the stairs. She's like, what is going on? And she goes into the kitchen and she sees a third one. And then they all surround her and they're doing this gibberish talk that she has no idea what they're saying, but it's super creepy. And she just starts saying, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus. And she's on the phone. She's calling our preacher, and our preacher goes there. But I really need to reach out to, like, my cousin and see if she remembers this girl's name and her mom, see if we can find out whatever happened, because it's like she just disappeared off the face of the earth. But then after that, I just remember being scared and always thinking about Ouija boards and how, or Ouija boards and OEG boards, however you say it, just thinking about how, like, That's gotta be demonic.
I was attacked by a ghost. For those of you who don't know, I'm a professional ghost hunter. We were invited to investigate a bar where they had some spooky happenings. People in this bar have reported to see and be touched by spirits. Now I'm one of them. As we started the investigation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. We tried to talk to the spirit through a spirit box, and all it wanted us to do was go up to the attic. But another ghost actually warned us and said that the attic is home to demons and Hell's Corner. We went up and tried to figure out which corner was Hell's Corner. The ghostly presence started to become stronger and was trying to get us alone. It specifically told me that if I went to Hell's Corner, I had to go by myself. I decided I was going to do a solo challenge. A solo challenge is where when we're on our investigations, we go into the dark completely alone with only a phone camera. But this solo challenge was horrifying. We actually caught it all on camera, so that's on our YouTube channel. As I was sitting there alone in the dark, I started to say these taunting and terrifying things. Like, why would you leave her alone? Don't you love her? And then it grabbed me. I've never been as scared in an investigation as I was during this one. And you can try to say that it was all in my head, but what happened next to David was even more horrifying. You can watch on our YouTube channel.
I genuinely don't know if I've had something attached to me my whole life, or if I've just spent years around places filled with grief, trauma, and fear. For privacy, I'll call myself E. I'm 20 now, but I grew up between Florida and Alabama. Most of my childhood was spent bouncing between my dad's side of the family and my mom's side. Both sides had very different beliefs when it came to the paranormal. My dad's side is deeply Catholic, but they also fully believe in spirits, reincarnation, demonic presences, and brujeria. Growing up, there were certain rooms in my cousin's house we weren't allowed in because he was heavily involved in witchcraft. My abuela would literally make us stay in our rooms while certain visitors came over. One man in particular, they called the Voodoo Man. We weren't allowed to look at him, talk to him, or ask questions. As a kid, I was more curious than scared, but even then, it felt like the adults around me genuinely feared certain things. Eventually, we moved to Alabama onto my mom's family's property, and that place felt eerie in a completely different way. The property had been in our family for generations and sat deep in the woods behind a long rocky road with a locked gate. There were abandoned barns, workshops, hunting land, old houses, and our family graveyard sitting down the hill. Some graves had names, some didn't. Past the graveyard sat my great-grandfather's abandoned house, slowly rotting in the woods. During the daytime, I'd wander around exploring because I was a curious kid. But at night, I refused to even look out the windows towards the graveyard. I always felt watched there. Not just creeped out, genuinely watched. What makes it stranger is that my mom experienced things there long before I was born. She told me her friends hated sleeping over because they swore the property was haunted. One night, one of her friends woke up sobbing, saying she saw lights moving through the graveyard and heard 3 loud knocks at the front door in the middle of the night. Her mom came and picked her up around 2 a.m. because she was so terrified. My mom also admitted she constantly felt watched growing up there too. Even my mama supposedly had experiences on the property. There's an old family photograph that still creeps me out to this day. In the picture, my mama is standing in her garden, smiling for the camera, but behind her is a tall man nobody recognizes. Blonde hair, green eyes, overalls, standing there clear as day, like he intentionally posed for the photo. My family swears he was not there when the picture was taken, and nobody knows who he is. Looking back now, another thing unsettles me. People have always said I look identical to my mom. We even have a picture where we are the exact same age and genuinely look like the same person besides the clothes. Sometimes I honestly wonder if whatever was there mistakes me for her, considering how similar our experiences have been. One day, I asked my grandmother why some of the graves didn't have names. That's when she told me years ago, during the time plantations still operated nearby, my family found a runaway little boy in the woods, dying from a fever. They tried helping him, but he passed away on the property and was buried there near a tree. After hearing that story, the land felt even heavier to me. As I got older, I started hearing footsteps, scratching in the walls, and constantly feeling like someone was standing behind me. Eventually, we moved away, but the feeling followed me. When I was around 13, we moved into another older house sitting on a hill near a winding road. My room had a strange locked compartment built into the wall above my bed with an old rusted knob and keyhole. I never opened it, but that room always made me uneasy. Around that same time, my parents' relationship completely fell apart, and the atmosphere in that house became tense and heavy. Eventually, my mom met another man, and we moved into a trailer with him and his family in Florida. From the moment I met him, something about him felt wrong. That's where I had my first experience I genuinely cannot explain. One summer night, I woke up suddenly with the feeling that something was staring at me. Everyone was asleep. Down the hallway, the sheer curtains looked like something was moving behind them. Then the air turned freezing cold, and it felt like pressure was crushing my chest and throat. I couldn't breathe or even speak. I remember staring into the hallway, terrified, while feeling dizzy and weak. Then it just stopped. The next morning, I noticed scratches along my side. After that, things in my life got significantly worse, and through all of it, I always felt like something was nearby. By freshman year, I became really interested in paranormal topics and spirituality. Not in a summoning spirits way. I was honestly just trying to understand things. Eventually, I moved in with my adoptive/foster mom. Things were calm at first, but after we moved in, strange things started happening there too. Footsteps, scratching, and my doorknob rattling at night. One night, around 3 a.m., my adoptive mom woke up furious because someone had been knocking on her bedroom door. My brothers were awake playing video games and swore they never knocked and didn't hear anything. The cameras showed nothing. Eventually, she got so uncomfortable, she asked me what we should do, and I suggested cleansing the house with sage and firmly saying whatever was there wasn't welcome. Oddly enough, things slowly stopped after that. Years later, I reconnected with my dad's side of the family and temporarily moved in with my grandparents and aunt. That house felt unbearably heavy, and everyone there openly admitted they heard and saw things. One morning, after coming home from a friend's house, my grandma and aunt randomly asked me if I thought I had something attached to me, whether I'd ever been baptized. I laughed it off, but they were dead serious. My aunt then told me that a little girl had died in the house years ago and that they would sometimes see her at night. Black hair, white dress, no face. Then my aunt said something that sticks with me. She doesn't like you. Later, they had me sit alone in the back room where most of the activities supposedly happened. Within minutes, the room became freezing cold, and I felt overwhelming fear, sadness, and pressure all over my body. I felt hard to breathe again, and every instinct in me screamed for me to leave. I finally ran out of the room shaking. My aunt later claimed my face looked different, and after I sat down, they noticed 3 long scratches across my back. I still remember my grandmother praying over me afterward. The weirdest part is that even after moving away, I still occasionally feel watched. Sometimes I'll hear scratching or movement at night. Nothing violent has happened recently, but the feeling has never completely left. What really gets to me is how people react when I tell these stories. My boyfriend gets genuinely concerned, not in a joking ghost story way either. He's told me multiple times that things I describe don't sound normal, and honestly, sometimes he seems almost scared when I talk about it. Part of me wonders if growing up around so much fear, trauma, old properties, and family beliefs has just messed with my perception. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this story, and of course, if you have a story you would like me to share, feel free to DM me.
Story time about when I thought I captured a ghost on video, but it was actually a woman doing her job. So I was walking my dog at the Hampton Mansion, which is a historic site in Towson, Maryland, and it is known to be haunted. So I was filming some videos of my dog for TikTok Shop, actually, of this water bottle dog bowl thing. Anyway, a couple days later, I'm editing some videos for TikTok Shop from the Hampton Mansion, and I heard this faint sound of a faint woman's voice talking in the background, and my friend listened to it and thought it sounded like it was saying, "Come here, puppy, come here, puppy." So we were like so freaked out. What am I doing now? Oh, I like showed it to a few other friends. So we're hearing this woman's voice on the audio, but there was nobody else around when I was filming this video. Later, after I showed this to so many people, I went back and looked at the timestamp on the video. It was actually from a different day when it was like 11 a.m. on a Sunday. Then I looked it up online, and the Hampton Mansion, they do tours at 11 a.m. on Sundays, and that's when my video was from. So I think it was actually just a woman doing a tour guide. Now when I listen to the video, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like a woman like giving a tour. So I don't think I captured a ghost on audio after all. So yeah, there's always an explanation, they say.
So listen to me.
The most famous ghost photos ever captured. In 1930, a school bus filled with children drove across the junction and was struck by a train. Ever since then, people driving past or even on foot have claimed to see spirits lingering in this area. This photo was taken by a truck driver who couldn't believe his eyes. Some people believe that this is a spirit of a little girl holding a teddy bear. Mr. Palmer was a photographer in the 1900s who was obsessed with trying to catch ghosts on camera. He attended an alleged haunted house in Somerset. In fact, he spent the evening there and nothing happened. But at 2:45 a.m, he saw a strange light appear from the room. He instantly grabbed his camera, put the flash on, and this is where he caught. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Taken in 2008 in a 150-year-old Romanian hotel, the photographer who took the photograph could not believe her eyes at what she caught. There appears to be a tall woman in a long white gown, hovering where the spa area used to be. Her identity still is completely unknown. Shall we do some more?
What if someone was watching you and you didn't even know it? Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. Grab a blanket and get cozy because I'm about to read a creepy story. With a weak sputter, the car finally breathed to life. The engine roared and the roadside mechanic smiled at me. After hours of work, he finally got my car to work. This wasn't the best start to my weekend getaway, but I wasn't complaining. I still had 2 days to enjoy. The only downside of this severe delay was that it was nighttime and I hadn't reached the Airbnb yet. The listing online just said it was a cabin and didn't specify much else. The location and price was hard to beat, so I booked it for the weekend and was almost there. After a couple more hours of driving, I finally rolled up to the cute little cabin. The size of the place was decent, and after walking around the inside, the master bedroom and bathroom proved to provide plenty of space for my stay. After reheating the fast food I had gotten on the drive there, I devoured it and got ready for bed. I closed the lights and dove into bed, pulling the warm sheets over my shivering body. Sleep came quickly as I was exhausted from the long drive. Unfortunately, that sleep didn't last long. I awoke suddenly and was confused at what had woken me up. I'm usually a heavy sleeper, so when I wake up, it's because something had been significant enough to disturb my surroundings. I slowly looked around the room and for the first time actually had the chance to inspect my surroundings more carefully. Interestingly, I hadn't noticed the strange paintings that surrounded the quaint little room. Hung on 2 of the walls were portraits of disturbing-looking men, wearing grotesque smiles and wide, bloodshot eyes. I couldn't imagine having paintings like that would make for a hospitable stay, but I wasn't one to judge the taste of others, so I brushed it off and started to drift to sleep. Before I closed my eyes completely, I couldn't help but feel the paintings watched my every move. as if they were waiting for something specific. Once again, the day's woes had gotten the best of me, and I fell asleep until the morning sunrise had come and gone. I got out of bed, happy to have gotten a halfway decent sleep. Standing in the middle of my bedroom, however, I sensed something was terribly wrong. Something didn't make sense. My heart pounded as I realized what it was. I sprinted outside and looped around the cabin to the outside of my bedroom. I stood there dumbfounded as I looked at the crystal clear view right into my room. Those weren't paintings I saw last night. They were windows. I love that creepy twist at the end. Let me know what you thought, and if you have any scary stories of your own that you'd like me to read, just send me a message.
So if you are seeing this video, I went live last night when I got home from the cemetery to show an experience that happened to me. I was closing up last night at the cemetery, walked into this work garage, and felt this burning on my right leg, knee area. Now, I didn't see anything at the time, but the burning sensation was burning pretty bad. I went home, did a quick workout, showered. As I was getting dressed, I noticed a deep, dark bruise to the left of my knee, and two deep, long scratches on that same area. Now, these things showed up within that hour, and I was doing a live to show that. I showed the scratches and the bruise, explained what had happened. Instantly, TikTok shut off my live and said I was banned from going live for a week. Their reasoning was, they said it was promoting self-harm, which it just blows my mind. Like, I was simply trying to get help, support, answers, because a lot of people in the community understand the paranormal. So I was simply showing what had happened and trying to get some insight on it, and they instantly shut off my live. Now, I did the appeal. They answered back with the appeal within 15 minutes and said denied. So to the people that go on my live every morning up here at the cemetery, you won't be seeing me for a week. That is the reason why. If you want to continue to support like the community that we've built there, you want to continue to support, get these videos out there, spread them, share them, because the more people that see them, the better chance I have to get some insight and some help and some answers on moving forward, what can be done to help with this situation. So again, I won't be able to go live until the 2nd of June. This is why I wanted to explain why. If you see this video and you're part of that community, share this video, get this video out there. Appreciate you guys.
You ever drive down a dark road and all of a sudden get the feeling someone is in the back seat? Well, that's what may have happened in this photo I'm about to show you. So in 1959, Mabel Chinnery went to visit her mother's grave and brought her camera along for a few photographs of the headstone. And before leaving, she snapped one more picture of her husband sitting alone in the car. At least that's what they thought. And when the film was developed, a figure wearing glasses could be seen sitting in the back seat. Mabel believed immediately that it was her mother, the very woman whose grave they just got done visiting. What made the image even more unsettling was that, according to the story, a photographic expert later examined the print and said it did not appear to be a reflection or a double exposure. That is why this photo still gets talked about all these years later. Because if the back seat really was empty when the picture was taken, then who came home with him? They thought he was alone. What do you think?